Hey everyone, Jarad McHugh here over at Mountain Gate. I'm here with Mitra-roshi Bishop, and we want to talk about her new book coming out, Deepening Zen, the Long Maturation Book 2, today is November 8th, and it's set for publication in, sounds like pretty
Just
soon, huh?
2 or 3 weeks, yes.
Okay, 2 or 3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and I should mention that Jarad has been an extremely excellent influence on this book. He's helped with the editing in very, very deep and expansive ways that have made the book quite excellent.
Cool, thanks. All right, so yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about it. So I guess my first question for you is why book two? Because you already did book one, Deepening Zen, the Long Maturation. So what was the impetus for book two?
Okay, the vision here is a trilogy. Book 1, Book 2, Book 3, and each of them is a deeper set of teachings on deepening your Zen practice. So book 1 is already including many, many things that are not normally taught in Western Zen. Out of my long experience of both training for 50 years and actively and in a concentrated manner, and also because of my subsequent teaching and seeing how people respond to different kinds of practice as traditionally taught. Our practice ordinarily comes to us, not all of it, but a significant amount of Zen practice comes to us from Japan. And the Japanese culture is quite different from the American culture. And consequently, it has very different ramifications that are sometimes trip up. I would say even more than sometimes, often trip up Westerners trying to do Zazen. Because our culture is so much more open and so much more psychologically based than the Japanese culture is. And, and so as a result, people have to have some tools to be able to work with that different way of practice that is essential if we're going to come to deep awakening. And people get into Zen practice for various reasons. Some people are just sort of mildly interested. Zen is a real buzzword. And so they come in and might work for a few weeks, months, and then they get bored and they don't want to do it anymore. And so they walk away. Then there are other people who have something within themselves that is so subtle it can't even be put into words. But there's an urge to reach something that's just seems like it's just barely out of reach. As one person put it, just beyond the veil. Some people actually come from a place of wondering why there's so much suffering. And right now in this world, there's a tremendous amount of suffering. And it is going to be motivating a lot of people to try to find some way other than the standard ways that we have been taught by our cultures that will make us fulfilled and happy.
Right.
And Rinzai Zen practice, which is what we teach here at Mountain Gate, is a very, very effective way of opening to that very deep presence out of which what we call awakening can take place. Now, there's several different levels of awakening, and this is why 3 books. The first level is ordinarily called Kensho, which literally means seeing into the nature of reality. And so that can be a deep enough insight that you could work on subsequent koans, for example. It's a point where you are passed on your koan, if you are working on koans, and you can read book 1 to find out what koans are about. Anyway, but then there are deeper levels. A satori is a deeper level of opening, and each increased level of opening to reality with a capital R brings us more freedom within our own lives to manifest the innate compassion and transcendental wisdom it goes way beyond social media, believe me, in our daily life. And the result of that is that we tend to create less suffering for ourselves and for other people. But then there's a deeper level yet, where you are totally free. And that's book 3, which we are presently working on. And that one is titled Awakening, because that's what we would call it. If you have come to awakening, this is deeper than, and more broad and more open and more aware and more clear seeing into the nature of reality than Kensho or Satori are. Mm-hmm. And so book 2, which we're talking about right now, is a deeper take on Zen practice.
Great, yeah, and something I really appreciate about book 2 is how diverse it is in all the different stories that it shares, because it has some of your own personal stories. It has stories from different religious traditions and different spiritual practices. We talk a little bit about, we mentioned Tibetan Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Japanese Zen, American Zen, where American Zen's going. So there's just a lot of different kind of textures in each chapter, which is really, really kind of fun to get into.
Yeah, and Jared's been a real motivator on this, because he's got such a background in English literature, and he's able to pull poets out of history who are really enlightened people and are expressing in poetry, in lay language, what we can open to in our Zen practice. Yeah. We also get into Sufi quotes. Rumi's got some amazing quotes, poetry. Beyond right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Translate that, and that is open to your innate, profound reality, which is the reality of all beings. We can talk like this, but if you've had even a little bit of experience of this, you understand how profound and how valuable it is to be able to open to that. Otherwise, it's like someone just recently sent me a trailer for a movie, a new comedy, a dark comedy, and the comment from the sender was, sooner or later it had to happen. It's murdering mindfully, and apparently it's a comedy about a lawyer who is able to use mindfulness techniques to I don't know whether he's solving the murder or catch the murderer.
I think he's committing the murder.
Oh,
Yeah, I think he's the murderer. He's using Zazen to deepen his murdering skills.
Oh my!
Yeah, skillful means. Yeah.
It's not exactly skillful means. No. It's very unskillful means. But at any rate, there's so many different assumptions around what Zen practice is, and what these books are pointing to is the deeper level and the deepest level of Zen practice that can bring people to real significant freedom. We can do Zazen, we can do mindfulness practice, and we can do psychotherapy. And I think psychotherapy actually is quite important, particularly if you have had any history of trauma. And you may not even know you've had a history of trauma, but it's going to start coming up in some form or another if you're doing deep Zazen. And that's when you need significant expert help, and also a very understanding Zen teacher who may have been through it himself or herself, which is the case here, so that there's an understanding of how to guide people. So you don't push them too fast. Sometimes you don't push them at all. You do encourage them to seek appropriate external experts to help. A trained, truly experienced, truly committed trauma therapist, for example, can help a great deal. And everyone I know who's a therapist and also does meditation, Zazen, says that when they have a client that does both, both the therapy and the Zazen go much faster. It's a dynamite combination under certain circumstances, but you have to find the right therapist, just like you have to find the right Zen teacher.
Yeah, and that's great. And even like in my own experience, just to, kind of confirm what Roshi's saying, I mean, in my own experience, that's totally been true. The way that therapy and Zazen seem to just feed into each other is incredibly powerful. So definitely recommended. And that's something I really appreciate about the book too, is that it avoids dogmatism. It's not saying, do Zen because God will like you. Do Zen because it will make you good. Do Zen because it'll make you special or something like that. Or to climb the hierarchy of Zen Buddhism. It's saying there's something inside of us, a lot of us, that hurts. Suffering brings a lot of people to Buddhist practice. There's something inside of us that hurts, but there's something more. And that's what this is about. And then Zen's just a really effective tool for getting there.
Yeah. Zen practice is essentially a tool. I know that people would argue with me that Zen Buddhism is a religion, but from my perspective, it's not a religion. It's a spiritual practice for people who are yearning to swipe a comment from the Statue of Liberty, breathe free, and live a life of clarity, wisdom, no matter what the circumstances are. And as we mentioned at the very beginning of this blog, things are going crazy right now. It doesn't matter where you look. And I'm not saying it's just because we've had what appears to be something of an upheaval in the presidential election in America, but all over the world, there are raging fires, so to speak. The Gaza Palestinian situation is dreadful. Ukraine, and those are just the sort of the latest, most in-your-face indications of this. In people's individual lives, there's chaos. We've been speaking about how one of the ways we have gotten to this situation is that people are raising themselves with screens. And when you don't have human contact, you do not learn how to be a human being and interact with other human beings. And the result can be psychopathic. There are instances where it is. You can sit in your house in front of your computer and never leave. You can make a call through your computer and get groceries. You can make a call through computer and whatever. You can text, you can get on social media, which has a major part of it is misleading. And that is one of the side effects of this. People are anonymous on the computer, and so they can tend to say whatever they feel like, whenever they feel like it, without any consequences, and more or less let it all hang out. And so the society itself is becoming more and more fractured. The teachings in this book, and in book 1 and in book 3, are how to work with the chaos and the insanity that allows no outward solution, but can be inwardly comprehended in such a way that one can be beyond free. It's impossible to describe the level of freedom that is available to people if we're willing to do the work. That's the challenge, is the work.
So that said, I mean, that challenge being the work, can you talk a bit about the title, The Long Maturation, and just where that phrase comes from historically? Because it's an interesting story behind it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up this subject, because it's vital. And it's something that, even though that term came from a very enlightened Zen teacher, student of Hakuin Ekaku, was the singular human being who was able to bring life back into Rinzai Zen in Japan. All religions, cultures, whatever, rise and fall, and they can rise again. And he had a student named Torei Enji, who was very, very deeply awakened and very dedicated to practice. And he brought up the term, the long maturation. He said, just having a kensho, for example, or even a deeper awakening experience is not sufficient. We are conditioned human beings from the moment of our birth. In fact, even prior to our birth, we are conditioned. It's known that fetuses can be influenced by the mind state of the mother, and certainly they can hear and so on. And I know from things that my own kids have told me about when I was pregnant with them, that they're not just a blank slate and then they come into life and then you have to fill the slate. They are perceptive. They comprehend. They know what's going on. And there's also reactions. I know a couple of people whose parents have said, or mothers have said to them, I didn't think I could get pregnant. And said with the right tone of face, I didn't think I could get pregnant, and I'm so delighted that I did because you're here. But what I have heard from people who've heard that from their parents is it did not come in that tone of voice. It came into, oh my God, I never got to finish my degree. Oh my God, I got to finish doing this work that I love. Oh my God, now I've got a kid. Now what? And that influences us. Whether or not we've been nurtured, cared for, smiled at in an ongoing way, whether or not the main caregiver has disappeared on us through death, through sickness, through whatever, it has an impact on people. Everything that happens in our life as we grow up creates an environment where we try to compensate for any pain and suffering by creating a self-image. Well, I'm not really a bad boy, or whatever. And we get deeply invested in that self-image. And accordingly, we act out in different ways and cause pain and suffering usually. And you know, this is not to say that people aren't trying to be the best people they are. They are trying. Pretty much everybody is trying to do the best thing they can in terms of living a happy life where they're not hurting people. But it happens because we feel hurt because of things that have been said and done to us, and so we project out the assumption about the caregiver on other people, or we transfer our feelings about that onto other people, and we end up creating a lot of negative habit patterns. Some positive ones too, but this is why having a deep insight into the nature of reality, initially there's a level of freedom where we are free briefly from some level of that conditioning. And then the tidal wave comes right back in, and we have this sort of ego backlash. And even after that has ramped down, unless when we see our behavior more clearly and realize the different ways we are causing pain and suffering, you can turn your back on it and say, no, I'm different. I've gotten over it. Or you can work on it and truly become free of it. Because if you turn your back on it, you put it in a locked drawer somewhere, you're not going to be free of it. And so the insight, the Zazen brings about insight if it's done appropriately. And the insight, if it's worked with appropriately, will allow us to see where we are not who we thought we were, and to work on that in very effective ways. It's so much more effective to work on our inner conditioning when we can see it more clearly. And that is the work of the long maturation. And the more you do that work, as you get deeper and deeper and deeper in your Zazen, the more free you are of being hooked by your conditioning. The conditioning begins to dissolve. And you begin to see things more clearly. And if you go deeply enough, you let go old grudges. You're able to live in a so much more free way. And it's just health-wise, it's so much healthier. No stress. The blood pressure comes down. And your innate wisdom and compassion come out and are able to function freely. And you're less and less likely to do knee-jerk reactions out of your conditioning, and open to the pain and suffering another person is expressing in their negative behavior, and understand so deeply that you don't need to react. It's not, you have empathy for the person's suffering rather than a reaction of I'm going to get even with you, you're being nasty to me, I don't like that, don't swear at me, all kinds of things like that. So all of this is about life, about living life in the most full, optimal, free, compassionate, wise ways. And we try to live life like that. I can remember when I was 6 years old and I could see that I was pretty greedy. I didn't want to be like that. And I kept trying to work on not being greedy. And I remember sitting in despair when I was 10 years old at my little desk in my bedroom. I'd worked all these years and had not made an inch move. But with Zazen, it's amazing the power that you have. The challenge is being willing to walk in, face things that have to be faced. And there's also a caveat on that, because, for example, in trauma therapy, you don't necessarily have to relive the trauma. You can definitely process the trauma without having to relive it. And that's an important thing to notice. So even if things come up, they come up energetically, more likely in our Zazen, and they can be worked with energetically. So these books are all about how to go there and do that and become truly free. Truly free. So book one is the sort of a not a big beginning level, because we can get our beginning levels at any Zen center. But this is a little bit deeper take on things and how to work with certain kinds of things that can come up in our practice. And then book two is a deeper level yet, and pulls in, thanks to Jarad, inspiration from all manner of sources.
So another question I have, I was talking with another student about how it sounds like Zen is more popular in America and Europe than it is in Japan currently.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is? Why is American and European soil so kind of ripe for Zen practice right now?
European soil is especially ripe for it because there have been, in the lifetimes of the people still alive in Europe, severe trauma, wars. There's wars almost constantly ongoing. There's the whole revolutions, the Romanian Revolution, the Hungarian Revolution, the Polish Revolution. People are struggling. The Berlin Wall finally coming down. And then the difference between East Germany and West Germany. And so they've got it in their face all the time. And when people have suffering in their face, at a certain point, if you have that inner sense of something that you can be free from, not in that it goes away, but that you have a different understanding of what life is, with a capital L, then you can navigate it in a so much more harmonious and free way. And words are not really adequate for this kind of explanation, as it happens in our bodies, and it happens beyond words. America is somewhat less so, because we've never really had anything happen on our soil that was that we remember right now in these generations, other than September 11th, and maybe for some people the assassination of the Kennedys. And so we don't have that sense. It's almost like we have a sense that we're beyond all that, but we're not. And the chaos that is coming to us right now, increasingly so in our own country, is challenging that. Japan went through a war with great deprivation, and during that time, there were people who were able to go very deep in their practice. I think about Morinaga Sokooroshi, who was just a late teenager when the war happened. And his parents died during the war, not in the war, but during the war. And the land that he thought was his, that his father said, never sell this, never get rid of us. You can't, land will always be there for you. Well, it wasn't, because there were, after the war, things were divided up differently. And so he went into a monastery, a Buddhist monastery, just to have something to eat. But he had a brilliant teacher who inspired him, and eventually he became a really incredible Rinzai Zen teacher. You can read something of his biography that was translated by Belinda Adaway. What is her last name? She was married to a Japanese monk, actually, and she was a Zen student herself. And she translated the early part of his biography, which is really worth reading for any kind of inspiration. But then post-war, just like post-war America, things began to look up. Slowly, people began to be able to have an income. And they it reminds me of the United States in the 50s, where nobody was interested in spiritual practice. The hype about Zen practice in Japan, when I was living there back in the 90s, was that it's impossibly difficult and painful. And so the Japanese are much more interested in supporting their economy and their various laws and regulations and so on in effect that help make that happen, by the way, and I don't want to get into that, that they're just not interested in Zen practice. There is a practice going on in Japan, or at least it was going on back then, where you, in the middle of winter, you dress in a very thin white robe and you stand under a waterfall chanting. That was going on when I was living there. But in fact, I was having acupuncture one day, and the acupuncturist actually did that practice. And she said to me, I can't imagine that you're doing Zazen. It's just so difficult. Zen practice is just really impossible. And I said to her, well, I can't imagine standing under a waterfall in the icy winter either. So that's how it is in Japan. And things change. There were times when Zen practice was a very, very deeply embedded practice in Japan. It's not so much anymore.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that level of uncertainty and instability that we've all experienced, especially we had the COVID pandemic, which seemed to wake up a lot of Americans, at least myself and people I know, who thought we were like, oh, we're safe. We're kind of on our own island almost. You know, that perception was certainly there, just like destruction, violence, illness, pandemics, just that happens elsewhere. You know, that doesn't happen here. And then sure enough, 2020 hits and, oh, oops, that does happen here, right?
Yeah.
And that's actually around the time that I started going much deeper in my Zen practice. I was into it a little bit before that, but still definitely kind of drove me deeper. And just people I know too just started kind of asking questions. People who weren't necessarily that introspective before or something were like, wait, hold on a second, what's really going on here?
Yeah,
you know?
There's something out of control, and I'm used to having control, and and now I don't know what to do. I don't know how to work. I don't know how to live. I don't know how to be.
Yeah, and that lack of control seems to be expanding. So,
it definitely is.
Yeah. So, what's your hope for this book? What do you hope it does?
I hope that it inspires people to really take a deeper dive into Zen practice and really commit to it, really move forward. Don't let yourself get discouraged, or if you get discouraged, then seek help for that discouragement, because discouragement does happen in Zen practice, believe me. If it wasn't for the fact that I had a life-transforming experience. It was an absolutely dreadful experience, one that people have called a shamanic initiation, where everything I valued about myself and in my life and my family was yanked away violently from me, and I was left with nothing. And the only way I could go, since it was very, very clear that there was nothing outside that was going to be stable long enough, or unchanging, or that I could be free in the midst of, I had to go inside. I had to look within myself, beyond words. And that's where the deep Zen practice happens. And that's what I'm hoping this book will help guide people into, both books 1 and book 2, and also book 3. Because it's got a lot of examples. It's got a lot of tools. You want to work with a true Zen teacher in order to do this work. You don't want to do it on your own. You get yourself into your own tangled places. I know people that have done that, and it hasn't come out very well. So I'm hoping that these books will inspire people, particularly in combination with the chaos that's happening these days in the world, to turn within. And as one Korean Zen master famously said, turn the light inwards and trace the radiance down to its root. Who are we? Where'd we come from? What's going to happen when we die? We tried to hold all of these things, apart. Oh yeah, and then people are afraid of death as a result. But true Zen practice will free us in ways that we never dreamed possible. And I hope that people will take these books and use them to reach that within themselves.
Great. Any other final thoughts or anything?
Nope. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like that was a great last few statements. Cool. But thanks for listening. And yeah, how are we going to let people know that the book's out? Are we going to send out links or put in the newsletter, all that sort of stuff?
Well, we have a digital newsletter that's free at Mountain Gate. It's called the Mountain Gate Journal. And if you email us, and you can do that through the link on the website, www.sanmonji.org. No, sanmonjizen.org. If you just Google Mountain Gate, it might come up. There's a lot of mountain gates, by the way, including golf courses and apartment complexes and another Zen center that's in San Francisco. But we are Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico. You can ask for a free subscription. It only comes digitally. There's no you can print it out if you want a print copy, but it only comes digitally, and it comes out 4 times a year. So that would be indicated. Book 1 is already on Amazon.com, and it's also available at many booksellers. You can special order it, or in some cases it might be simply available right there on the shelves. And Book 2 will soon, as soon as it's out, it's going to be on Amazon as well. Book 1 is also available as an ebook, and Book 2 also will be. No Audible at this point, but at least they'll be in ebooks, and it's a really nice, beautifully laid out book, thanks to Genshin Jeremy Cranford, who's a professional designer and a Zen student here, who's done a beautiful job of laying out the book. I hope it will become a treasure for people, really. So just stay tuned. We'll put out another announcement probably on YouTube and Vimeo about this. And by the way, speaking of Vimeo, it allows us to upload our talks, teishos, Zen talks, the teachings, in higher definition than we could otherwise. And it also is ad-free, which is a big plus for us. To be ad-free on YouTube, you have to pay. And there's no way that a company, for example, or blogger can have it ad-free for everybody. It's up to the viewers to make it ad-free. But in Vimeo, it's ad-free to begin with. And so we are gradually moving over to Vimeo, and our new teishos will be posted on Vimeo and not necessarily on YouTube. So if you're interested in following the teachings, go to Vimeo and search Mitra-roshi, and it should come up. And I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching, and I hope you do follow up on these books and find them as helpful and educational as I hope you will. Thanks.